Hello, welcome to First Fridays in the Exchange Art Talk. This is the first Art Talk in the 2022-2023 season. My name is J.A. Süss, and I'll be your moderator this year. First Fridays and our members are getting busy. We're proud to say that we have a return of our printed guide of First Fridays events, which you can pick up around the Exchange District. And that's sponsored by the Exchange Biz. That's for people who don't want to use their phones when they're out and about and just want a quick paper guide for what's happening. There are a whole bunch of art events, open galleries, and video art to see. And if you are interested in looking at your phone while you're out and about to find out what's on, you can go to our website at www.firstfridayswinnipeg.org. And our calendar is available for viewing there on our website. Before we go any further, I'd like to do a land acknowledgement. And if you want to, you can read it along with me. First Fridays was started to encourage people to come to the Exchange District in Winnipeg. We acknowledge that it is located within Treaty 1 territory, the original lands of the Anishinaabe, Nahiawak, Ojibwe, Dakota, and Dene peoples, and the homeland of the Métis Nation. Our water here in Winnipeg has been taken from Shoal Lake 40 First Nation on Treaty 3 territory. Our hydroelectric power comes from hydroelectric dam projects in Treaty 5 territory. We would like to work towards greater understanding and acting on how to decolonize art, artistic practice, public discourse, and ourselves. I want to talk a little bit more about some events, and I have to say I was pretty excited to see all of the things that are open for viewing and seeing and buying and experiencing. There are things that will still be open after this talk, so make sure you have your mask and your proof of vaccination where required. Please be aware that there may be capacity limits and possible appointments that you may or may not need to make. So some of the live performances tonight are at Ace Art on Princess, at Utopia on King Street, including a stand-up open mic from 7 to 8, followed by a comedian, Danielle Kiyahara, at 9 p.m. and a free dance jam. It's not for free, it's for $10, but it is a free dance jam. And that's also at Utopia. Urban Shaman tonight features spoken word closing hybrid reception. So that's in person and online of Wakotowin. And that's 1 year after. So that's 7 to 9 p.m. live at Urban Shaman Gallery, and their masks are appreciated. If you do wear a mask there, that'd be appreciated. So one of their spoken word artists that will be performing live there is Shayla Elizabeth, and she is an Inouye mixed blood cross-cultural adoptee. Joanne Wilson, who is Anishinaabekwe, a traditional singer and drum carrier, knowledge keeper, pipe carrier, and Aaron Dumas, who's Cree and a djembe player. So they'll be performing at their First Fridays event. Also, Creatory Gallery and Studio is open tonight until 8 with COVID protocols in place. So masks are mandatory and vaccine passports are required between 5 and 8 to keep the more at-risk artists safe. And please stay home if you're ill. And Creatory will have a capacity of 50. And there will be contact tracing there as well. So you can see some of these protocols are still in place in different venues. Artbeat Studios features our main speaker tonight, Eli Bird. And you can go to that show. It's open until, I believe, 8:30. No, 9:30? 9:30, 9 o'clock. Okay. So that's going to be very exciting, and you'll find out in the next hour just how exciting it will be. And MAWA is another one of our member organizations. They had an online lecture at noon today, and they'll follow up with a members show and sale until 9 tonight, also until 9. And non-such, the brewery has a specialized menu tonight as well. So lots of very exciting things. Just going to do a couple more boring things, which is I just want to before the talk, thank our sponsors, the Winnipeg Free Press, the Exchange Biz organization, Collective Broadcast, who is enabling this recording, as well as the Manitoba Arts Council, Winnipeg Arts Council, the Winnipeg Arts Council Billboard, Artbeat Studios, First Fridays members in general. So thanks to all of you. And I'd like to introduce our two artists next. Eli Bird was born in Selkirk in 1997, and Eli was always artistically inclined. In high school, he began making charcoal and graphite self-portraits, then portraits of others, and still lifes in ink and watercolor. Eli says that his high school art teacher gave him the confidence to call himself an artist, and they are still in contact. So since his Artbeat residency in 2019, Eli has focused more on reconnecting culturally and is a proud Indigiqueer artist. He says, I try to convey my experiences as expressively as possible, sorrow, longing, desire, while suggesting an overall sense of hope. He says he has used self-portraiture extensively to point towards his own identity and self-acceptance. Although the trans colors and narratives continue to shape his work, his increased knowledge and connections to Indigenous identities are what fuels his arts practice today. His spirit name is Little Bear, and his most recent practices experiment with naturally forged elements and the fiber arts to breathe new hope and resistance into Indigenous communities, into Indigenous existence. I got to take my glasses off here because the glare is just annoying. And, you know, if you've had progressives before, they kind of like mess with where you're reading the thing. Sorry, that's just a personal note. Well, more about Eli. Art. Eli says, art doesn't have a purpose in my life. It is the purpose. Creativity comes naturally, and making art was what he was put here to do. It provides fulfillment and healing. And he adds, he's calm, friendly, and intuitive with a good sense of humor. And Eli likes to keep the peace, but is also very passionate. He says when he gets interested in something, he really puts himself into it. And I'd like to introduce our other guest, Lisa. So Lisa Oberich is a helper and an artist. Lisa has been driven to make and create art for as long as she can remember. She's the studio facilitator at Artbeat Studios Incorporated, and she oversees the artists in residence. In her work there, she initiates outings and community connections. She also facilitates group art sessions and mental health conversations, as well as individually connects with the artists via mental health check-ins and goal setting. Lisa approaches her work from a diverse set of backgrounds. She is in the final stages of completing her art therapy certification through the Toronto Art Therapy Institute. For her final project in February 2020, she facilitated group art therapy with newcomer adolescents and young adults in response to the 9 chapters of Kent Monkman's Shame and Prejudice, A Story of Resilience. She's a dedicated artist, and she has a long background in social services locally and internationally. Lisa says, art can be a part of the healing and shaking up that this world so badly needs. I'm drawn to the art that makes that kind of good work explicit. Over the last 5 years, some of the artists whose work that Lisa's most closely followed includes Christy Belcourt, Isaac Murdoch, Kent Monkman, Kit King, and Aaliyah Chapin. Fritz Eichenberg is also simply awesome, and I wish he were still alive. So, well, after that long introduction, welcome to you both, Eli and Lisa. Let's get right into talking about the exhibition called Tooth and Nail. Eli, can you say hello and talk about that for a bit?
Hello. So, yeah, I'm Eli, and the exhibition being called Tooth and Nail is the title was something I had in mind for quite a while before even having a date for the show. To me, like the phrase tooth and nail really resonates, like as someone who has struggled with my mental health and fought tooth and nail to get better. Um, it was important to me to like reference that, I guess. And there's also a couple of literal teeth in the show, so it worked well.
Excellent. Can you talk about the bones and the teeth that you acquired?
Yeah, there's raccoon skulls, wolf teeth, and coyote atlas bones. Most of them I was gifted. The raccoons I was gifted from my cousin. The wolf teeth came to me from an aunt, and then the coyote atlas bones I did purchase. So
Just want to sort of get back to the name Tooth and Nail, and I'm wondering if you want to describe a little bit more about some of the fight that you have succeeded in, to this point.
yeah, well, when I started my Artbeat residency, I had been in the middle of what would be years of therapy. I unfortunately had experienced a lot of trauma throughout life and um, a lot of things to overcome. And I'm in a much different place now than I once was, but it really was fighting tooth and nail, like every day, was a challenge. And uh, it's radically different now. So it's a bit odd to think back at just getting out of bed being hard when, I live life pretty fully now.
Right. So this is it's like a big success, this show.
Definitely. And it really represents to me like how far I've come in the past few years and how different I am from like the 22-year-old who was shaking at the idea of people viewing my work.
Yeah. Um, so can you tell us what these bones are doing in the exhibit? What's the theme of the exhibit? I guess what do people see in your show when they walk in?
I think the overall theme with like the bones and stuff is giving things like new life. To me, it represents like the revitalization of my culture because I am indigenous. I am Ojibwe and Cree, and you know, uh, certain parties tried very hard to eradicate the culture, and um, it really is a form of resistance too. Just like my existence is really.
Right. So I was gonna say what are so can you describe some of the pieces in your show, and maybe it's a great chance to look at some of the pieces from the show.
Yeah, well, we actually have one right behind us here. It's the first dream catcher I've ever made. Um, excuse me. It has a raccoon skull in the center here, and then the three feathers are guinea fowl feathers. And growing up, my mother had always made dream catchers, and they're really significant to me because I've struggled with nightmares a lot. And the story of the dream catcher is that it essentially filters your dreams, like you hang it in the window, and it's supposed to let the good dreams through and catch the bad ones. And yeah.
Do you have a sense of the functionality or the power of that?
I do. I like am growing to be a more spiritual person by the day. And I also found too that even though it's a practice I just begun, making the dream catchers came really naturally to me. Like I picked it up very quickly. And it feels right.
Nice. So when did you decide that you were going to make dream catchers for this exhibit?
Very recently, actually. It was only like a month ago that I started making them.
And how did that process change as you were working on them?
Um, well, the speed changed pretty quickly, as well as I think too the level of anxiety decreased. Like was very nervous the first time I made one. Because there is an aspect of like overcoming, deep seated shame around cultural things. Like when I was a kid, I was embarrassed of the dream catchers I had in my room and stuff. Um, Whereas now I'm proudly displaying them in an art gallery.
And what was it like to have had dream catchers in your past and then to learn to make them? What was that like?
um, it was really powerful in a way, I suppose. Like growing up, like watching my mom make them, I had always wanted to learn, and just due to circumstances and stuff in her own life, she hasn't been able to teach me. So I sought out, how to learn on the internet because I'm very much a millennial. So we turned to YouTube, and yeah, it worked, and it felt very, like I said, natural to me. Like once I started.
And do you get a lot of your artistic training from the internet?
Yeah, like um I generally say self-taught, but it really I am taught from the internet.
Right. Do you follow specific channels or makers or teachers?
I follow a few for like inspiration, but when it comes to actually wanting to learn a certain technique or a new medium, I generally just type in like how to into YouTube and watch a few and go from there.
I think the whole access to information is really sort of changing like the weight of formal Western training. Um, where were you in sort of in the process of self-identification when you encountered or first heard about Artbeat Studio?
Oh, I actually had just kind of come out because I'm transgender. So like I had just really begun like publicly being Eli. Um, so it was very early on. And it was really great because I was embraced for exactly who I was. Like no one ever like questioned the pronouns or my name or anything. Like it was just like, okay, you're Eli and this is the art you make. Cool. Let's talk about that.
Right. So as far as that self-identification goes, there's like your gender identity, and then there's also like identifying as an artist.
Yeah.
So when you signed up for the group residency, were you um, like just ready to self-identify and be embraced by the world, not only as Eli, but as an artist as well?
I I was, but it was a struggle. Like it as the bio stated, like my high school art teacher was really the first one to be like, no, like you're an artist, like you gotta stop playing it off as if you aren't. And it I think too, like having such issues around confidence and self-esteem really played into it. And I had been recommended Artbeat for about a year or two before I ever even applied because it took that long to, not only garner the confidence for the application process, but also the confidence to say, yes, I am an artist.
That's awesome. Go, go art teacher. That's really great.
He's actually coming to the show opening, so
Nice. That's so nice.
yeah.
It's really, I found over the years, just the keeping and maintaining relationships with people who have been your mentors is really vital for life giving.
Definitely.
Um, so, what are some of the things that you learned at Artbeat Studio?
Um, for like technical things, it was really helpful to learn how to like go about pricing work and sort of how to arrange like a gallery show and put on something like this. And then for the less technical aspect, I learned the importance of like community and that others were seeking the same thing. Like it's human nature, right? To want to be a part of something. And
Yeah.
I think too, I learned that like I'm far from alone in not only like being the weird art kid, but like also someone who struggles from time to time, like with, you know, particularly anxiety, like around like showing your art and putting yourself out there in that way. Like it's nerve-wracking for most people.
Yeah. The whole state of possibly being judged or just being judged at all. For sure being judged, you know.
Exactly. Like the worst fear is you know you put something on a wall and are waiting for someone to come look at it and overhear like a negative comment. But so far I haven't had that happen, thankfully. But I think too now, like if something were to happen like that, I'm better, you know, equipped to handle that kind of judgment, sort of shake it off.
Yeah, and not everybody likes everything. It's just a fact.
Exactly. And like, I don't know. I don't really mind if people don't like it anymore.
Yeah, and it's hard to, not everyone can be everyone else's favorite, but we're all important to our existence is all important to make a whole.
Exactly. And like that was something that I used to really struggle with. Like I really needed to be liked, you know, and would have a really hard time if I felt like someone didn't like me or didn't like something I made too, because like you put so much of yourself into the artwork you make that someone critiquing it or judging it feels like they're critiquing or judging you. So
Hmm. And
been
it's
able to separate myself from it a bit more, I think.
yeah, so important, that sometimes when there's a negative comment, people think like, oh, well, I guess I shouldn't do it at all, but that's, even if someone made a negative comment, they didn't think you should disappear or not make anymore, you know, just maybe isn't their favorite.
Yeah. And I find too, like with art, it's really is more about the process and like keeping it fun. Like I am just coming off of like a year-long art block before like putting together this show because I put so much like pressure on myself to continue the old mediums I had used and found like that I was good at or whatever. But once I focused more on the fun and freedom that comes with creating, it like resparked why I love it to begin with. So yeah.
Did you do your residency before the pandemic?
Yeah. I did my residency in 2019. Just right
And
for it.
so, what are some things that you really benefited from then that may or may not be possible now?
um maybe like the closeness physically, like being able to just kind of pop over and be like, hey, like what do you think of this? Or, you know, just or even make conversation about how someone's day is going, like that sort of connection. Um yeah.
'Cause it's a group residency, right? How many people are in the residency at a time?
Around 8, I'd
We
say.
have between 6 and 8 artists at a time. We can host up to 8 artists at a time.
Great. So can you talk about the okay, I'm gonna change my mind, go back to that question later, but maybe Lisa, you could talk a little bit about curating this exhibit and what some of the challenges were for you, or maybe generally even what are some of the challenges that you face as a curator working with artists doing their first solo show?
Yeah, that's a great question. So specifically, something to keep in mind is that all the artists that I get to work with to curate their first Friday shows are folks who have completed the residency here sometimes since its first group, which was in 2005. And so they all have some kind of previous connection and relationship with folks in this community. So there's already kind of a base established trust of one level or another coming into it, which is really, really helpful because it means that we can kind of jump in a little bit quicker into conversations around like, oh, this is really interesting. Like, can you tell me a little bit about why you want this piece to be the focal point, or why is this piece the one that you think is like the most worthy of like the spot that everyone looks at when we walk in, where that might feel like an intimidating question for someone that you have no previous relationship with. So we're already starting off with some form of relationship right from when the artists bring in their art pieces. And the challenging thing for folks when it's their first art show is kind of walking this line of really wanting to affirm the hard work that it took for them to, first of all, show up with their art, to bring it to someone. Many of them have never met me before, to bring it into a space where they don't know who else is going to be here. So affirm that work, and also affirm the months and sometimes years that it took for them to prioritize their artwork and their art process and their art materials. Because when they were in the residency, they had kind of that really close peer support where folks were getting excited to see you every day. And if you weren't there, someone would be like, oh, hey, Eli, I didn't see you this week. How have you been? What are you working on today? But when folks are done the residency, they don't have that same kind of daily accountability. And so I really want to affirm and validate all of the hard work that they have put in to get to this point. So you do to do that, but then also sometimes people will bring in pieces that I'm questioning as a curator the fit in the particular show. So sometimes an artist might bring in like 150 pieces, and they're telling me how they want to set it up in our, I don't know, 200 square foot gallery space. And sometimes it's about figuring out like, how do I like affirm that, yes, like it's wicked impressive that you have made all of this stuff, and that is like worth noting, absolutely. And at the same time, there's absolutely no way that all of those pieces are going in the show. And so how do you do that at the same time? That's probably the biggest challenge. Another one would be pricing. Pricing is always a challenge, regardless of, at least in my experiences here, whether it's someone's end of the residency group show, which happens at the end of the 6-month residency, or whether it's their first solo show, or whether it's their 5th solo show here. Pricing is always a bit of a challenge. So some folks come in with a really clear idea of what they want to price it at, and it's always their choice. 100% it is their choice. They get final word. I will often say, do you want my input? And usually people say they do, but by and large, the majority of the artists say, I don't know, I feel really weird putting a price on this. Like Eli mentioned, like it's process art for a lot of folks. A lot of folks like just have to make this. Like it is your very life is like dependent on, I have to make this art piece. How dare you ask me to put a number on this? How dare you ask me to like offer this to the world with a price on it? And at the same time, when they do, it's like, drastically what I would call underpriced. And so it's always having big conversations about what is your hope? Are you hoping to make money from this art piece? How much of your heart is wrapped up in this art piece? Let's look at some of previous sales at Artbeat and see similar material and kind of skill level involved. Let's see what they were priced at and if they sold at those prices and stuff like that.
I think this theme was talked about in our March art talk with Mahalik Cuff as well, who was talking about, being invited to show in shows, but no, they didn't have the resource of sort of being the resource of having a curator and have someone talk them through this process. It was just a matter of, you show up and put your price on it, and sort of an assumption that you just are going to do it, like a much more general call. So that's really helpful to, to like build skill and to, have a conversation and to be able to feel more sure about something, or to be, to have that professional input is very valuable. I am wondering, and I want to get into more of that pricing conversation in a minute, but or maybe let's do it now. So, some of the objects are they are dream catchers and are considered to be like either medicinal or healing or sacred objects. And so I'm wondering if Eli, you could talk about some of the issues that come up when you're pricing objects that are, I know you had mentioned that your mom made a lot of dream catchers and gave them away,
Yeah.
so to have them as an integral part of your process, how does that feel, and what are some of your thoughts about that?
It's definitely a struggle because like you mentioned, like growing up, my mom would always make them as gifts, and you put a lot of love into them and stuff. And then another piece I have in the show is a medicine necklace. So it's okay, thank you. It's got like sage and cedar and lavender and a little braid of sweetgrass in it, which culturally are considered sacred medicines. Yeah, here we go. There's a little blue jay feather in it
Just
too.
a blue jay feather.
That's beautiful.
There's
Thank
some
you.
little teeth there. Those raccoon teeth.
Yeah, raccoon
Yeah.
teeth. So that piece in particular is the one I struggled most to put a price on, because like medicines you don't sell, like you gift them or you can trade, but in a way it is a trade with money. Like it's unfortunately, we live in a capitalist hellscape and food costs money. And I would like to, be nourished. So I did put a price on it, and same with the dream catchers. They, are all for sale, and there is a lot of internal struggle around it. But overall, I think that I genuinely believe artists deserve to be paid for their work, and stuff like overrules it. And like you gotta practice what you preach, right? I tell all my artist friends, like, no, you gotta charge more. Like you deserve to be paid. Like this is awesome. And yeah, lead by example. So
Yeah, I think when you think about, what the money is going to go for and what, artists have to do, you have to survive. There isn't a food sharing mechanism in place. There isn't a clothing making mechanism sharing in place. There isn't a free rent for everybody, mechanism in place. So
exactly. And most of the materials, like I had to buy. So like there's even the aspect of just trying to break even.
and there's the part where you'd have to go, if you did gather all of those things, that represents, a lot of different additional costs. So I'm wondering, did you also buy the raccoon teeth?
No, those were gifted to me. So when my cousin gave me the skulls, they also gave me the teeth.
And how is that to part with those items?
Um, honestly, like there are certain ones like that I feel more attached to than others. Like a part of me is a little sad to part with them, yeah, but I also love the idea of them having new homes and someone loving it enough that they want it. And every time someone buys a piece of my art and has a piece of me hanging up on their wall in their home, like there's just something so special about that. So it's definitely worth it. And what I may be like a collector by nature, but I don't need like a room full of teeth.
Oh, that'd be pretty cool.
It would be, but
I also want to just add that Eli has also done something that doesn't happen very often in art shows here, and that he has a poem that he wrote, and it's framed for display in the show, and there are copies in cellophane sheets below it on a plinth, and on the label it says, if this poem has touched you in some way, please take it as a gift or consider making a donation to Artbeat, which is, I think, kind of points a little bit to the internal struggle of putting prices on things and putting things for sale in some art forms.
yeah, especially like the poem is one I wrote like about my grandmother after like she passed. I was the one who picked out her casket, and like that's like the title of the poem and stuff, and putting a price on that, like uh, how do you do that? So yeah, there's copies that people can take, and if they feel inclined to donate to Artbeat, because I genuinely like don't know where I'd be without the program. So it's one that's very near and dear to my heart, and uh, please donate to them.
Can you talk a little bit about sort of art, like the beginnings of Artbeat and how it survives on donations? Maybe even point to the history of Artbeat and how that has influenced you. Maybe Eli, you can take that one.
Okay. Well, when I did my residency, it was before Lisa was here. Our studio facilitator at the time was Nigel Bart, and his two parents like founded and ran Artbeat, sort of inspired by him, because he's someone who, like me, has had struggles with mental health, and used art as coping. Like the whole like slogan is art saves lives, because it really does. And I still just think that's such a beautiful story. Like not only did these two parents love their child enough to like go through all this effort to help him and encourage that artistic nature, and but they founded this whole program to help others too, like that it's such a beyond just their family unit. Like there's so many people that could benefit from this, and um I'm very thankful that they realized that and did it and went for it and created this wonderful program along with like Studio Central and Upbeat Artworks, um and just that like sort of destigmatization too that comes along with it. Like even in the past 10 years, things have changed pretty radically in terms of like being able to talk about mental health. Like, and when they founded it, it was at a time when there was a lot of shame and a lot of stigma and stuff. So I'm really in awe of them because it was brave, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's brave to, be public at when it's not easy to do that.
Exactly.
Lisa, I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about the Artbeat Space itself at this
Sure.
time.
Yeah, so we're located at 62 Albert Street on the fourth floor. So the images that you're seeing on the screen there are two images. They're both kind of in the same space. So the left one is our lounge, and there you can see we have pretty comfy seating for about 10 people. And then in the middle, we have kind of our gathering table, and we have some collective art supplies. So this is my favorite space on the floor. We do have the whole floor. And this is where we do kind of our weekly check-ins, our debriefs, our sharing circles, gratitude journals, art journals, and just general hangout and coffee. Sometimes the couches are used for napping. Sometimes they're used for, just having coffee and snacks and just general hangouts. And the image on the right is a picture of our communal kitchen, which is open to all current artists and residents. So we have everything we need to prepare like a full meal or baked goods, and artists are welcome to use any of those supplies there as they prepare their own meals or meals for the group. Yeah.
Neat. And this looks like a library and workspace.
Yeah, so these are also very close to the space that we just saw. And so the image on the left is our art library, and it is well used, and we have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of like just totally awesome art books that are also free and open for any current artists and residents to utilize. They can bring them home or they can use them in the space. And that's really, they're really great for when someone has hit an kind of an artist block, a creative block, or if they're bored, or if they need any kind of mentorship or direction. We've probably got a book that can speak to it. And the image on the right is our pottery room. So one of the things that Nigel Bart, the founder, found integral in his healing and recovery was working with pottery, and the cool stuff that can happen when you're working with clay and you're working with this material from the earth, and then you put it in a kiln, and then it's totally out of your control and you don't know what's going to happen, and you're hoping that it's not going to blow apart, but really you don't know. And so we often like to use the metaphor of going into the kiln and going into the fire and being transformed. Because for a lot of folks here, we're peer support space. We offer non-clinical support for folks who live with mental health challenges or mental illness. And a lot of us have can really relate to that imagery of being in the fire and not sure if you're ever going to get out, but you know that if you do, you're going to be someone different. And that's kind of like when it comes out of the kiln. And so this is the space where we do our pottery work. So we provide all the clay. And then we have a wonderful Artbeat friend. Her name is Eleanor, and she comes in once a week and provides one-on-one kind of as hands-on or hands-off like guidance as somebody wants in making their pottery.
Very cool. So coming out of this, we've got one more image.
This is the last image. So as we mentioned already, we provide free studio space for up to 8 folks at a time. And so this is one of the studio space. So we don't provide any materials for the individual artists, just because folks come in working with such a wide range of material. We might have someone who's a fiber artist, someone who works with bones, someone who is a singer-songwriter, someone who is a writer. And so they're responsible for their own materials, but we provide the studio space, an easel, a work table, and a lockable filing cabinet or storage unit. And so this is an example of this is my favorite one. This is an example, yeah, of one of the studios that we have.
It's nice and bright. It's got great windows.
Yeah.
So coming out of this sort of like group situation, and it's been around 3 years since you completed your residency, Sort of what is in between, Eli, for you, and how did you feel connected as an artist? How did you remain connected? And that's such a cool image of Lisa's shadow on the wall there. Anyway, how did Artbeat do in terms of like maintaining community with you?
Um,
It's really bad. That's
sorry.
a little bit.
Well, through the power of social media, I've stayed connected both with like the program and the individual artists that I did the residency with. And then also through Upbeat Artworks, I volunteered after my residency for a little while. And that really helped not only with just like the community aspect of it, but for confidence building in terms of wanting to return to the workforce. It's very helpful for that. And actually, like this past summer, I've been juggling 2 jobs on top of making art. So yeah, and I still like am in contact with other artists and stuff. 2 of them came to the last group show I did, which was through Queerius at the Edge Gallery. And yeah, it's been nice.
And can you talk a little bit about what Upbeat Art Studio is? What is it? Who's it for? And what did you do there?
It's Upbeat is Artbeat's like alumni storefront. So people who have gone through the residency and completed it can then sell their works at the store, and it's in Portage Place. So like as a volunteer, I was the store clerk. I sold art and did cash register stuff, and yeah.
And interacted with like phones and people coming up, like strangers, which can be a
challenge.
thing.
Yeah. And I at the time had just been done my residency, so I had a couple of my own pieces in there, including it was called Pretty Boy. It was a deer skull that I had painted with like pink antlers and some blue and pink dot work on it. And it was actually used for the poster for my group show in 2019. And that was like right on display in the front window of the storefront. And it was really cool to be able to talk to people and answer questions on it. Like not just about people curious, like in maybe buying it, but like other artists who were curious about, working with similar materials and stuff. Like it was a lot of fun.
I'm just going to add into that. Upbeat is run by James on the 2nd floor of Portage Place, kind of above where the food court is. And as Eli said, all of the artwork there has been made by folks who've completed the residency. It's a social enterprise, and for any art that's sold, 80% goes directly back to the artist, and 20% we keep as a registered not-for-profit.
And I think aside from James, it's volunteer run.
Yes, it's 100% volunteer run.
Yeah.
It's really awesome.
So how did you know, kind of going from there, how did you know you were ready for a solo show?
That's a tough one. I think it just had been, long enough from the residency that it felt right. Like I have gained a lot of confidence since then, I'd say. And I think my art too has evolved a lot. Like it's changed a lot. I'm working a pretty much completely different medium than I was then. And yeah, I've realized I love the attention, so wanted to roll with it.
Nice.
Yeah.
I just want to sort of dip back into sort of like looking at that time period, just as I mean, you had a lot of things really kind of coming together at the same time. So like there's a lot of, you know, intersectionality that you're bringing in terms of like cultural learning and personal identity and identity as an artist. And do you think that like how can people see these things in this exhibit in Tooth and Nail?
I hope so. Like one piece in particular, I did a little bit of beadwork in, and it's the only beadwork I've done really. Not very experienced with it yet. Hopefully, like to change that. And I incorporated like the trans pride colors, the rainbow colors, and the non-binary pride colors, to really try and bring the two kind of main aspects of like,
I don't know if you can see it's just so much reflection. I don't know if that's gonna work.
Oh, there's some bones there. What kind of bones are those?
Those are muskrat hip bones.
Oh, that is really interesting. So with the two hip bones on each side and the beadwork in between, it's almost like like it's like almost loinclothy or something.
Yeah, what I gotta be honest, wasn't intentional, but once I saw it like coming together, I think it worked really well. Especially as like a trans person, like it just kind of it worked out, and it's a piece I'm quite proud of, and I made it too specifically like for my partner when we first met. So it's titled For Alex, My Love. And it's really a celebration of like not only my identity, but theirs too, because they're under the non-binary umbrella. And to me, it represents like togetherness, and like the strength that comes with that.
It's very poignant, sort of just as in terms of like it being beaded work, you know, between hip bones, but then also as a because it's beadwork, sort of like a lacing together. So I think that's beautiful.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So I'm wondering if you want to if there are any other pieces you'd like to highlight. Did we talk about the pearls on the skull? Can we talk about I know we saw it already, but can we like talk about it again or see it again, or
Oh yeah, we got the picture there. So it's a raccoon skull, and this one was in a bit of rougher shape than the other one I used on the dream catcher. You can see like behind the eye socket, it's a little broken, and near the front too of like where the snout is, it's a little chipped and stuff. And basically I glued on all these pearls individually. And just on the one half of it. And I used a couple different sizes too to try and give it some dimension, and then finished it off by putting it in the shadow box. And I think it nicely has like the incorporation of sort of the like rough and tough like skull, and then the delicate like pretty pearls, which is a nice juxtaposition that I really like to play with, like, and I'm quite proud of this piece. I know it really resonated with Lisa too. When
this one like moved me to tears. I just, for like very like personal reasons, I love skulls in general. But the pearls are really special to me for a few personal reasons, and I love this piece. It's my favorite piece in the show. I love it.
And
Yeah.
I find too, like, the use of like a shadow box to finish it really took it from feeling like, you know, a craft to a piece of art. Even though it's the same thing, like, just it really finished it off nicely. And I'm quite proud of this one.
I really like sort of the themes of the, the remnants of a life, and um, the the gender implications of pearls
Yeah.
on the skull. It has a lot of um, sort of if you know it's sort of if made by a trans artist, it has different meanings. It has different gendered meanings and layers in it that are available to think about.
Yeah, really, like, to me, when I look at it, I really feel kind of the balance of like the masculine and feminine kind of qualities I think we all as humans contain.
Yeah. Is there anything, well, I'm wondering, there is another photo slide that we could have a look at. So it's the self-portrait sort of portion of the show.
Yeah. These two are titled Forested Indian, and it's spelled like NDN, 1 and 2. And these are from last year, 2021. I have since quit smoking cigarettes, so I'm 6 months free of nicotine. Just gotta put that out there. And um, I was playing around with some makeup and like gluing some plants to my face and stuff, and um I find the use of self-portraits really, like, for years and years have helped me come to terms with who I am. Like, before I had ever transitioned or even came out as like queer at all, and I was in high school, I like kind of was forced to do a self-portrait as a project. And I really fell in love with it because, like, I remember my teacher walking by and just stopping straight up in his tracks because he's like, "That looks like you," because it was. And I managed to catch the likeness, and I was very much inspired by Frida Kahlo's works, being, not conventionally beautiful, but turning herself into beautiful works of art, anyways. Um, and yeah, these sets of photos in particular, um, I was very much going for like the lives in the forest and is becoming part of the plants, like, kind of vibe. And I think I too, just personally, I was dealing with a lot of emotions, specifically around like anger and stuff. And yeah, I don't always like myself and the way I look, and having some fun with self-portraits and specifically moving into photography for it instead of just like drawing and stuff was a challenge. Um, but one I'm quite pleased with the results of. Like, it's a new thing to look at a photo of myself and be like, I like the way I look there. And yeah, now they're on a wall, a gallery wall for people to
Yeah.
look at. I turned myself into the art.
Nice. And now you're got to get ready to let it go and move on as
Yeah.
you're putting them up for sale. And so I just wish you a lovely gallery opening. I hope the evening is going really great for you. And thank you so much for spending this time. Thanks to you as well, Lisa. Thanks to both of you.
Thanks for
I
having us.
really appreciate it. Thanks for your work and for your honesty and your vulnerability in really bringing a lot of different pieces of yourself forward in this exhibition. So we've come to the end of our talk. And I would just like to do another round of thank yous to our sponsors. I just want to thank Collective Broadcast, who has been working at this, and specifically to Aaron, who has been doing the work. Also, thanks to the Winnipeg Free Press, thanks to the Exchange Biz, and thanks to Manitoba Arts Council and Winnipeg Arts Council. Thanks to the Winnipeg Arts Council billboard, as well to Artbeat Studios, which is located at 62 Albert. And I'll make sure that we there is stair-free access to the gallery, and there's a phone number included, which we'll just drop into the chat here. As well, I want to thank Artbeat Studios as a First Fridays member, and to all the other First Fridays members that make First Fridays happen. So thank you so much, and I wish you all a lovely evening and a very safe First Fridays.